Hello, Christina of Red Soul. Thanks for tuning into this video. I'm starting off with this week finally talking about the Taliban and the situation in Afghanistan. One of the stories that brought my attention and the other I'm going to share on my podcast. And you can find me on Anchor, Public Radio, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, just to name a few. But I came across this story about Lara Logan. That's her. And she's a journalist. She's been out for a long time. A journalist from South Africa. And she's also a Fox News contributor and also on Fox Nation. She had some hard times. One big incident she was assaulted by about 30 Egyptian guys when her camera malfunctioned and her team couldn't save her. So she was sexually and physically assaulted, and by the grace of God and her courage and strength, she persevered. And I'm not saying she forgot it, but still staying strong, as she mentioned in an interview with Laura Ingraham. So the title reads, I kind of changed it because that's how I'm going to title the video when I'm finished. So it says, Logan criticizes Biden about women suffering long, slow death of the Taliban. And as we know, Taliban and also of the Muslim faith, there's no secret of how they treat their women. And so this is not the only story. When Taliban has taken over other nations, especially in the West, not only do they not assimilate, but they make it to the point where you have to assimilate with them. That has been the case in Germany, Belgium, France, Britain, England rather, just to name a few. Even Sweden and Norway. So Charlie Kirk this afternoon did a good job how these people took over, whether it's assaulting women, coming up to people, during a holy holiday, maybe like their holy holiday, Ramadan. So I don't know what's holy about it, but that's what they call it. Going up assaulting people because, they're consuming alcohol in their own country. But this has been the case dealing with these people. And so in this case of women being in danger, we know the secret of Afghanistan, how the ladies are veiled, in addition to countries like Saudi Arabia, where the women are fully clothed, where at least in Saudi Arabia you can see her eyes. In this country, in Afghanistan, she's fully veiled. You can barely see her despite of the heat. And there was an interview about that a long time ago of an American journalist. I don't know how to have the courage to do this, to go over there and interview these women about what they're facing in their own country. Something as simple as not being allowed to laugh. I've probably been dead a long time ago because that's what I like to do. So here's how the story reads. Fox Nation host and former chief foreign affairs correspondent of CBS News, Lara Logan, has repeatedly blasted President Biden and his administration over the botched fatal withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, what I heard about this situation is that they're talking about pulling the troops out first, despite of the civilians, especially Christians over there, that are in danger. And you would think that, unless they're not telling us the truth, that they would take those civilians out first, and then, our military, as strong as they are, would go last, similar to the situation in World War II. but maybe we're not reading the whole story. Quote, can you imagine the deputy commander of the Taliban, the head of Hakimink, excuse my pronunciation, network? She emphasized, they are the Afghan Al-Qaeda. I'm sure you heard of them before. And before I continue, the interesting thing I heard on a different podcast, a lot of people are against him because he calls himself a race realist and says a lot of politically incorrect things that people do not like. So I came across this podcast on my way to work, and interestingly, there's a Arabic word or phrase as a signal or code to surround a woman and they can have their way with her. You can just imagine what's the horrific trauma she goes to and what's that like. He swore allegiance, loyalty to Osama bin Laden. This manifesto that he released more than a decade ago is exactly Al-Qaeda's manifesto. After Biden telegraphs withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Taliban took over the country's capital. Under Taliban rule, women will face a long, slow death. Under Trump, this wouldn't be going on. Logan said, adding that the luckily women in Afghanistan will be slaughtered quickly. And this is how much pain they go through when they're assaulted. It's a long, slow death, Logan said. If you're unlucky, you're unlucky. Excuse me. You'll just have to be slaughtered quickly, because that is what life is like for women. Excuse me. Wow. Under the Taliban, a long, slow death. So it is probably stoning or something like that. And like they do in North Korea when they would torture the Christians or martyr the Christians, they bury them to the from the neck down so that they wouldn't move. And it's really horrific. They run over them several times until, and it probably doesn't even have to take that long, because if they're driving fast, rolling over their necks, they're probably dead instantly. I imagine with here, if it's a slow death, most likely it's a stoning. Same concept. She's buried up to her neck where she can't move. And they usually do this to women in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, Muslim in particular. If she's so-called accused of adultery, and just imagine if she's been sexually assaulted and it's not her fault, yet she still gets punished for that. So you feminists out there, you really need to slow down with the complaints, because for you to even have work and breathe and drive without fear for your life, you ought to really be grateful for this great country. Parts conclude. Holding back tears, it is the end of freedom. Well, they have no freedom over there. Former 60-Minute correspondent said many women will be forced into sex slavery and denied basic human rights. Okay? So let's say maybe she wants to get food to feed her loved ones. She may have to do something as an exchange or a favor for that, which is really disheartening. Is the beginning of a life of possibility sexual slavery, which is a nice way of saying the R word, or sexual assault every day by a man you don't love. Even the ones you know and love will do that, or think loves you. Being denied the ability to love, you are denied the ability to have your own family, to have privacy, to have a dream. It is the end of everything that is good in us. Then she discussed her first experience with the Taliban. Okay, basic human rights like no work, as I mentioned, no schooling, not able to leave home without a male presence, so a male relative like a cousin or whatnot. And for a long time before women got to drive in Saudi Arabia, it was the same case. Now, it may be up to the male family, like a father, for example, or a husband, if he still wants his wife to drive or have a driver take her everywhere. Okay, so they're not completely free either, just because they're allowed on the road. Now, it causes the men to drive more carefully. But when I was working with Saudi men, and they didn't have any problem with me because they knew the culture was different. They knew not to play that over here. And some of them would say, what was one incident that, a student said? Oh, it was a video. But doesn't mean they don't believe this. Where one of the I think it was a sister who she wanted to go to the mall. She had to serve the men first, like make them cookies or cook for them, make them a sandwich or whatnot, before taking them out. Now, there are men in particular, even in this country, that would think that's paradise. And I won't say his name, but to say he's never been married, I understand why. Women were beaten if their belt buckles were too shiny. What? Girls were not fed in the orphanages until the boys have been fed. And all of this is because they know women are smarter than them, and they're intimidated by them. Just like, for example, in among Black America, and I think Mexican Americans in Mexico, other groups as well, I'm sure, and even in some Asian cultures, if a woman is too successful or whatnot, the men ridicule her and shame her. Depending on how. Now, American men are not traditional because they grew up in this country like we did. But I remember there were times where I would be verbally assaulted. The B word was their favorite, or ugly, bitch. Some of them would spit on the ground. Any way to, what's the word that when people try to do to lower your self-esteem? I got to hinder it, like pull me down. And when I ignored that and then let that get to me, they couldn't say anything but look foolish, as the losers most of them are. In recent days, spokesmen for the Taliban have claimed that they will give women rights and fight preserve. Well, how can they do that? Logan called the promises mere propaganda talking points as agreed upon by its political masters and backers. I guess people who support and agree with this. But this is the time where we really have to not only pray for our nation, because again, we don't know what will happen here, Christians are persecuted worldwide in over 50 countries. It's illegal to even wear a cross. Your cure, Afghanistan is most likely one of them. If you profess Christ publicly, you may be killed. Now, if you're military, I guess, one of my colleagues who was a woman used to work there, and she was fine. Because I think they pay staff, like outsiders, maybe like 6-digit figures to teach English. I don't know if it applies the same with women. But she said she was fine when she was there. But I'm pretty sure she had to cover her too. And then, she had a kid and had to come back here, and that was it. But I don't know if she would have stayed there or not. But she said she was fine while there. But as a believer, I'm pretty sure in Christ, as Jesus has said it during his ministry, the beginning of the church, Christians being killed, we have 50% in the last century alone. Believers, our brothers and sisters, are being martyred left and right. I encourage you, if you want to read more on this, on my website, red-soul.org. There's also a page about the persecuted, and I have a couple of websites up there that you can take a look at it for more stories like these, because our media is not going to tell us. Pray for our nation, the persecuted church. Again, this is Christina of Red Soul. God bless you. Later.